Well, I'm sure people will be trickling in, but we have a lot to cover, and I've got to jump into an inspection right after this, which is why I'm teaching in my car today. So I'm just going to give you kind of a workshop style walkthrough of setting up your goals for fourth quarter. And I'm basing this on the outline that's available in The One Thing. That's one of our like go-to Keller Williams books that Jay Papasan and Gary Keller wrote. So The One Thing, it's great. There's an awesome podcast that's very, very good. Lots of good information in there. And then they have a website that has some really excellent resources. So I'm pulling this information from the One Thing book, but also from something they have on the website. It's their Kick-Arse Guide to Goal Setting. I did not write this. This is from the One Thing. It's really good. It's really, really helpful. This has been a hard thing for me to figure out. I'm a big at goal setting. I'm big at setting up systems and breaking down your goals and time blocking and all that stuff I've been doing since I started in real estate. You know, I use a planner. I'm into all that stuff. But when I moved over to Keller Williams, there's a lot of jargon, right? Like everything has an initial, or there's like numbers, and people are like, what's the GPS? What's the 411? I don't even know what this is. And it's taken me a while to really wrap my head around it because I've been using other systems, but really they all kind of come back to the same thing. So I'm going to kind of briefly overview how they recommend starting out your goal setting, like kind of from a higher level, like an overview, and then breaking it down to something smaller, more manageable. The piece that isn't really in here that I use and I find really helpful is planning by quarter and goal setting by quarter rather than just the whole year. The way this gets broken down is monthly and weekly from a 1 year perspective, but I like to have that extra step in there of the quarter because it's a really nice way to, how many of you have like had a deadline for something that needs to happen this year and conveniently don't even think about it until like November or maybe December? Yeah, like CE. I'm not touching CE for a little while, and I know it's due December 14th. So what I find helpful with quarters is I only have 3 months to get stuff done. So it's a reasonable amount of time to set a great goal, but it's a short enough amount of time that I'm not thinking I've got all year to get it done. It's also a really nice way to get a refresh in the year. You know, I just started my new planner for the new quarter, and it's just a really nice little energy boost, a little bump in my momentum to feel like I've got a fresh start and an opportunity to kind of step back and put a little bit of closure on what's happened so far this year and look forward to the last 3 months of the year and make them really count instead of just letting them kind of trickle off into the next year, which a lot of agents do. Fourth quarter oftentimes ends up being the time when people are like, well, the holidays are November, December, and that's basically the whole quarter. So I'm pretty much just going to cruise to the end of the year. So, you know, that is how some people approach it. But if you really want to have an awesome year, every quarter counts. And fourth quarter is the time when you start the momentum to get the first quarter of next year going at a great pace. So it's really important that if you're not, you know, rolling in lots of business by the end of this year, that you at least are very clear on your priorities, very clear on your goals, taking some really excellent steps towards some of those bigger things that might not necessarily mean doing business, but they're working on your business. And that stuff is really important too. So you may approach it in a number of different ways, but that's the big focus. So I see some more people jumped on. Hi, everybody. All right. So if you don't have something to take notes with, make sure you've got that. I'm building off of the kick as guide to goal setting from the One Thing. And you can get this on their website. You just give them your email address and your firstborn, and then they'll send you a copy. So The big things to think about when you're goal setting, really when you're looking at the whole year, the way that they build it out, and I think it's a good way to guide what you're doing when it comes to setting your goals for the quarter, the month, is to look big picture. So this is an exercise to do another time if you haven't already. We've talked about it before, but think about your big long-term goals, your 5-year, your, beyond that, your 3-year, and your goal for the year. And you may have set something for this year, and this is your opportunity to maybe adjust it, extend it, shrink it back, change it. So if you've got something big, like for me, that's my transactions and volume, the number of happy clients I've had this year. I've adjusted that each quarter, even though I had one big goal for the year. It's been tweaked as we've gone along in this very unusual year. So that's an example of one that may get a little bit adjusted. When it comes to other goals, keep in mind you want to have at least one personal goal as well. So whatever that may be, it could be a health goal, family time goal, that sort of thing. But those big things are going to help you goal set to the now. So when you're looking for your motivation, you're thinking about your why or your big picture that's going to drive you through the quarter, it's good to know what those big things are. So it's good to keep that in mind. So as you're kind of working through this, my thought is that you'll be able to continue working on this after the workshop today. So when you are doing that, think about your long-term and 5-year goals, personal and business, brainstorm several, and then just pick, 1 or 2, 3 maximum, depending on how involved they are, because these are going to get broken down into branches by using the GPS. So what the heck's the GPS? So that is really, they have a chart for it, but you can just write it on paper, honestly. But basically, the GPS is breaking down your goal, is the G, into priorities, which is the P, and then you break that down into strategies. So the GPS, or the 1-3-5 is the other way that you may have heard of that. So 1 being the goal, 3 being the priorities, and 5 strategies. So 1 goal, 3 priorities, 5 strategies. If you have a team or you have people helping you, there may be some strategies that are owned by different people. This is also a good way to make sure that there isn't one person really carrying the load on your major goals. But if it's just you, it's a really good way to look at what you should really be putting your time and energy into, where you should be prioritizing, where you should be focusing your energy. So that's your GPS. So you're taking your one thing for the year as a reminder, or one that you have tweaked a little bit. If it's your production goal, it may be, originally I wanted to sell, 60 homes this year with happy clients closing. But now I'm, with COVID, I changed it to 45. Well, it turns out August was pretty awesome and October is going to be crazy. So I'm changing it back. It's going to be 65 now. And how am I going to get to that number? Well, I've got to set some priorities. What are my priorities? Leads, listings, and leverage are one way you could divide that up. You could focus more on your relationship building. So those connections you're making with people, developing your pipeline of people, figuring out what the important activities are to making that business happen. That's a big piece. Another thing would be your marketing. So whether that's taking advantage of what Command has to offer, doing more on social media, deciding to do something from like a mailing standpoint. If you're doing just listed, just sold, farming and neighborhood, that might be part of it too. And then your systems to make you more efficient. And that's always been one for me. In order to handle the high volume I do as a single agent with an assistant, I need to have systems in place for everything, because at any given time, we have 15 clients under contract and then also active people on top of that. The only way we can pull that off is with systems. So that's usually my third priority, is looking at those systems. The important thing to keep in mind when you're breaking this stuff down is to keep it simple. Don't get too complex about it. If you're like, well, I'm going to do marketing, and then every marketing strategy is going to be this super involved thing that requires 10 steps, you're going to overwhelm yourself. So keep it really basic. If you're ever in doubt, the line from The One Thing, which is really helpful, is what is the one thing I can do that will make everything else easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing I can do that'll make everything else easier or unnecessary? So that means if I'm looking at increasing my production for the rest of the year, reaching my goals for how many happy clients I'm going to have close at the end of this year, the most important thing that I need to do right now is connect with my past clients or connect with my sphere, because most of my business comes from referral. So I've got to figure out how to connect and really nourish those relationships. So that's priority number one. And how can I strategize that? Well, I haven't made phone calls in a while. That's something I could do to check in on people. I haven't sent out a mailer in a while. It would be really nice to just send people some like happy mail and, maybe put a little something in there, or just write a nice note about why I think they're great and how much I appreciate their support, that I'm here for them, whatever it is. And the third thing I'm going to do is really engage with people on social media. It's something I can do immediately. It's something that I can get immediate feedback on, and it's very easy to do. And for me, it's fun. So that's how I'm going to break down my priority to strategies. I think I really only need 3 strategies. I don't need 5, and that's okay. So that's where I'm going to focus my time and energy. So that's how your GPS breaks down. So you've got your goal, your priorities, which I would do no more than 3, and your strategies, which I would do no more than 5. But if it's fewer than that, that's okay. And especially when you're an independent agent, you have a lot of things on your plate when you're new, figuring everything out. Build that into your goals. Make the things you need to do part of that. Don't make it separate. Make it so that what you're working towards includes those things you need to do. So that's really where you're focusing your energy, instead of saying, well, I've got this goal thing, and then I also need to figure out how to write an offer. We'll just make it all part of it. Build it all out together. Does that make sense? How is that looking for people? Is anybody writing these down? Is there anybody here who's used the GPS before or has tried kind of putting this outline together? Casey?
I haven't done that, but naturally I'm a writer, downer, list maker, goal setter person. And so I chunk it up. So my first focus was function. So get me up and running. First month is all about being able to do the job. And
yes.
then the second month is about strategy and marketing. And then my third month, I think, is going to be about consistency and execution. So that
awesome.
I build on each one. But yeah, I feel like this is going to be perfect for my personality type.
Cool. Maybe a little delay there from you, but I got all the info. So looking at marketing, looking at her strategies, follow-up, accountability, big piece to that too. And just the ability to do the job, right? The basics, the skills that make us valuable, that make people want to work with us, that help us do our job confidently. That's huge. So those are big pieces. Those are really important things to focus on. They all tie into those 5 things we're wanting you to focus on as well. So, practicing your offer to purchase, understanding that document and the other documents as well. Having your buyer agency and buyer consultation put together, your listing presentation, your 100 contacts in command. So all these things can be folded into those goals and into your GPS. Is there anybody else who's putting one together that wants to share a little bit about how they broke it down? You know, you're not going to do it if you don't start writing it down. It's nice to sit in the class, but who's actually going to put them on paper? It's not going to happen if you don't put it on paper, I'm telling you.
I have a goal.
I do. Yeah. Who is this?
Jackie.
Okay,
So,
go for it.
I joined a team recently, and so one of the things that I wanted to do was we have like a team brochure. And I mean, I would have done this anyways, even without like the team. I was going to put, my business card and kind of just introduce myself as being a new real estate agent and send them to people that are kind of like my top contacts. For instance, like the neighborhood that I grew up in, I know all the families that live there and they all kind of still live there, the parents, and I feel like they're getting to that age where they might be downsizing. So I wanted to introduce myself as a real estate agent and be like, I know this neighborhood, I know the ins and outs of it and I can help you sell it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of doing. So right now I'm just trying to get everybody's addresses, which I'm kind of just like going in to MLS and like trying to see if I can find addresses by just using the map and stuff. But that's kind of my plan.
Cool. And if you know their names, you can do a couple of things. You could go into MLS through the tax records, and you could search by their name to get the address, or you could search a range of addresses and then all the tax records will pop up for those names.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Yeah. So you guys, the thing to keep in mind is I think it's really easy to think of this as a very complicated, multifaceted, this is really complex. This has got to be really impressive. No, the goal of this is to make it very doable. It should be digestible. It should be something you can measure, you can accomplish. That's very clear. It should be simple. It should be so simple it feels silly that that's the thing you should be prioritizing, because doing these very basic things over time consistently is how you make progress. It seems really silly, and I myself, when I started goal setting, felt like I needed to make them very complicated and impressive, and at the end of the day, this is for you. This is not for anybody else. So it should be very clear and straightforward. It should be something you can accomplish, but also something that motivates you. So you really don't need to make this a super complex thing. So really think about what's most important to you, where you are in your business, where you want to go in your business. It's different for everybody, and that's okay. Not everybody wants to be a mega agent. Not everybody wants to build a big team, and that's okay. And if you do, there are steps you can take to get in that direction, but it's really, really about you, your priorities, where you want to go, what your why is. That's what this is about. It's about you living your best life. It's not about you living like the Keller Williams best life. Everybody's is different. So keep that in mind too. Once you have your GPS, so you know where you want to go because you have your goals, you know how you're going to get there because you've got your GPS, your priorities and your strategies. The next thing you want to figure out is what you can do right now. So pinpoint what you can do right now, today, this week, and that's called the 411. So that's step 3 of the process, and it really just breaks things down into what you can do right now. I found myself getting really stuck on the GPS and then not quite knowing how to translate that to daily activities. Has anybody else been in that position where it's like, okay, I know what I need to do. I can break this down to a certain point, but then how do I just put it on my to-do list for the week, and then I'm like, I don't know what I'm exactly supposed to be doing, but it surely couldn't be as simple as just calling a couple people. Like there's got to be more to it, right? So then it just got pushed to every week's to-do list, and I just felt bad about it and didn't do anything. So the 411 is going to help you break that down into more useful steps. So it's what you want to accomplish in the month, what you want to accomplish each week, and what you're going to do right now. So so you're breaking that down into smaller bits to make it very doable. you know, every little step getting towards that goal. And there's also a page for that on this document. I'm going to see if we can get this into the Facebook group too for launch. But basically, you're breaking down your annual goals, your monthly goals, your weekly goals, and those are personal and business. So that's your 411. It's 4 weeks, 1 month, 1 year is kind of how you're focusing that down. So when you're looking at the quarter, you could add another piece to this. You could say my annual goals, my quarterly goals for quarter 4, my monthly goals based on that, and then my weekly goals broken down from there. Does that make sense? So it really is just about piecing it down to the most digestible level, something very doable that doesn't require a big to-do in 4 hours, just simple steps, things you can do each day, something you can do every week. One thing I found helpful is to say, okay, if one of my things I need to do is to write notes to people in my sphere, I'm going to give it a measurable amount. So I'm going to write 10 notes a week. And for me, I need to have focused time to get that done. So I'm going to say every week on Wednesday, I'm going to write 10 notes to people that I know. And it could be birthdays, it could be home anniversaries, it could just be somebody who I think is great. It could be focused on a certain group of friends or a certain area, someone who sent me a referral, whatever it is. Every week on Wednesday, I'm going to write 10 notes. And that helps me actually get that done, right? So I'm not just saying like, I'm going to write notes to people. That'll be so nice. And every week I'm like, write notes to people, and I don't do it. So breaking it down to when is this, this task is going to happen weekly, and it's going to happen on this day. And that brings us to step 4, which is to time block your activities. So you know what your goal is, you know what your priorities are, and you know your strategies. And you've plugged those in to what you're going to do this month to reach that quarterly goal, which is leading to that annual goal. And you've plugged that into smaller pieces into what's happening each week. And if the next step that's really going to make it happen is to plug it into the days. So best thing to do, sounds really simple, talk about it all the time. It's super legit. Just make an appointment with yourself. And this means it's not negotiable. So if you have somebody who wants to meet with you, or you're scheduling a showing, find a time that's less likely to be conflicting with those things. Block it out. It's an appointment. You don't have to tell people, oh, I'm working on my notes that day. Sorry, I can't show you a house. That feels really silly, right? You don't have to say that. Just say, I have an appointment then. How about this time? That's all you have to say. You don't have to explain yourself. People don't need to know. They see you doing amazing things. They don't know how you do it. It's because you're making appointments with yourself. You're scheduling a time to actually do these tasks. And they can be very simple, one thing tasks. Very easy. They shouldn't be super complicated. Give yourself a half hour. Give yourself an hour. Give yourself a power 15 and see how much you can get done in 15 minutes. Like however you want to set it up. If you give yourself a set amount of time, rather than saying, I'm going to do this thing and then see how long it takes me. Has anybody done that? And you're like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 2 hours and I don't think I really did anything. Yes, I was just there yesterday. I didn't block out my time appropriately. I was like, I'm just gonna do a couple things real quick. 2 hours later, I barely finished anything. What am I even doing, right? So block out the time. It gives you a limit, makes you more efficient, gives you time to really focus, make sure that you're set up for success, and you're making those steps towards your goals getting accomplished. It's really those little steps that get you there. So if you've written down some things that you want to work on for the quarter, you've broken them down into your strategies from your priorities, and you've figured out what you need to do each month and each week. So, okay, every month, that means I have to reach out to 40 people with handwritten notes. That means every week I have to reach out to 10 people with handwritten notes. And now I'm time blocking Wednesday. I know Wednesday morning, I'm less likely to be bothered by people. So I'm going to schedule to do that at 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning, 8:30 to 9. I'm giving myself a half hour, just efficiently work through those notes. Nothing too long, and it doesn't have to be a freaking novel. Just a, hey, thinking about you, yada yada, love Amanda. Stamp, address, seal the envelope, put it in the mailbox, all in that time period. Otherwise, you're going to walk around with cards in your bag for 2 weeks, or your car, right? So have it blocked out and just get it done. And you're making that progress. It's amazing what you'll see start to come back if you get yourself into those habits. This is when I do this. I'm just plugging away, It doesn't seem like you're going to see immediate results, and then all of a sudden they start to pop up. I have not been great about reaching out to people in the last couple months. I've been very busy, but I've done the basic, the very minimum of what I need to do to be in touch with my sphere. And I did a ton of that in the first and second quarter, and it's still paying off. I still have people who seem to just appear out of nowhere, and that's not the case. I've been communicating with them. I've been trying to get more contacts and building those relationships, and that stuff adds up, you guys. It's really crazy. Another thing I was working on was getting feedback from past clients. So I was asking them to put their feedback into Zillow, to put their feedback into Yelp, those sorts of things. I've done very little with my website, but I have tried to get my clients to at least follow up with some feedback after their transaction, or at the very end, while they're still like reading your emails and doing the things you tell them to do before you close. So I just have an email format that's all set to go, send it out to people right before closing, ask them to fill out feedback on all those sites, give them the links. And because people are doing that, I have buyers that pop up out of nowhere, and people selling, who are like, oh, I found you online. I don't pay for anything. I don't pay for any leads. I have a very basic website, but because I'm getting those, that feedback is out there, people are seeing positive feedback, they're reaching out to me. So it's those small things where you don't really think about this being immediate in business, but they start to add up if you do them consistently over time. You've really got to stick to it. It feels boring, but it's those little steps, those little one things that'll get you towards your goal. So just to review, you've got pinpointing your long-term goals. So if you haven't already, make sure you write down, what's my long-term goals, personal and business? What's my 5-year goals, personal and business? What's my 3-year goals? You guys, the amount of change that can happen in your life in 5 years is incredible. Incredible. One of the first times I met with Charlie after I moved over to Keller Williams, I was talking about, where I wanted to go and where I thought I could bring my business and what was my roadblocks. And all he asked me was, look back 5 years and think about where you are now versus then. And I like burst into tears. I was like, I could not have fathomed 5 years ago that I would be where I am now. And it's totally from doing this, setting these real true goals, setting some really outrageous, awesome, exciting goals, and then building backwards into the very, to some extent, boring, kind of monotonous, small things you can do on a monthly, weekly, and daily basis. It really makes a difference. I am living proof of this. So make sure you take the time to write those down, really understanding what your big motivating factors are when you have those hard days, when you've got jerky clients, when the co-broke is not being nice or cooperative. It's good to go back and think about, okay, why am I doing this? What is my really big goal? I want to have a foundation. I want to donate to as many organizations as I care about in the community. That is very motivating to me. So even on the hard days, I look at that big, big goal and I'm like, okay, these little things are going to lead to that. I got to refocus. What should I be doing right now? So your GPS is how you break those down. Goals, priorities, and strategies. So 1 goal, up to 3 priorities, and 5 strategies from each of those. And they can be very small, simple things. Don't overwhelm yourself. And also, while you're writing these things down, it's a good time to consider what you could delegate. Maybe have somebody help you with, even if it's on a temporary basis, or if you have children who are capable of doing things like putting stamps on envelopes, stuff like that. Then break it down to the 411. So break it down to 1 month, 4 weeks, 1 month, and 1 year. So going backwards, you've got your 1 year, You could plug in your quarter there, then your 1 month, and then your 4 weeks. So what are you going to be doing each of those time periods? What's your action plan? What do you have to reach as your threshold? So if you're trying to have so many sales at the last quarter of the year, well, what does that mean each month? You know, maybe October needs to be more sales than December, because December is a slower month. It's a holiday time, it's cold. So, okay, if my goal for the rest of the year is to have 9 sales, 9 happy clients close transactions in the fourth quarter, maybe October I'm going to aim for 4 or 5. And then maybe I'll spread it out a little differently between the other 2 months. Okay, and then for each of those months, how am I breaking it down week by week? What activities should I be doing each week? And then step 4, blocking your calendar. So make sure you're giving yourself a specific time when this is happening on a specific day. Make an appointment with yourself, put it in your calendar, do not change it, and then actually do it and use that time. And pay attention. If it's taking you longer and you're really working hard, make that time block a little bit longer. If you gave yourself a big block of time and you are just messing around and not getting much accomplished, and you're on social media a whole bunch and that's not what you're supposed to be doing, shrink up that time. We expand to the time we give ourselves for activities. So if you can get it done faster, just get it done faster. Nobody says you have to work an 8-hour workday. If you can get everything done in your morning, stellar, do that. Then you can do other important things. One of the quotes that's in here that I thought was really good, in response to why do some people succeed where others fail. This is from Dr. Richard Gunderman. He said, one of the traits shared in common by successful people is a sense that they make things happen, as opposed to a sense that things happen to them. So it's easy to get into this business and be like, well, I mean, it's like whoever comes along, right? Whoever walks into my open house, and that's just the business I've got. Not true. You can really, of any job I've ever had, of any business I've ever observed, this is one where it might be a little longer time frame to get that feedback, to get that closed transaction with your happy client. But if you put in the effort, it will pay off. It will pay off. If you are really thoughtful about prioritizing your time, about how you're going to accomplish your goals, about what you're doing and why, you will see business happen. It is inevitable. So it's really very cool that you can really control that. And this is the key to doing that. In my opinion, this is the key to making that happen. And then the step 4 is that time blocking your calendar. Don't forget about that. So giving yourself that time. The morning is a good time for a lot of people to have their office hours. You could break that down into certain tasks that you're doing. However, that breaks down from your goals. That can also mean your personal goals. First thing in the morning, I'm working out and I'm meditating. That's a win for the day. I'm starting out with good momentum. So remember, it's not just about your business goals, it's your personal goals as well. You have to remember that you have a life outside of work. We are working to live, not living to work. And then from there, you're going to set up your task list. So for me, it helps to have an ideal week set up. So, Monday this happens, Tuesday this happens. These are the things that happen each of those days. It's not fully filled in, but that's where my time blocks are. And that's my ideal week. So anytime I schedule an appointment with somebody or set up a new week on Sunday night, I'm looking at that ideal week, tweaking it as needed, and plugging that into the next week. And then I'm breaking down my tasks. So everybody's got their to-dos. There's always stuff to do with your, transactions that are under contract or clients that are looking for homes. So when that's happening, you'll have those to-dos as well, but make sure that you are keeping in mind the other things that you've got to do to reach those goals. That's why plugging them into a time block is really a best case scenario. Then they don't get forgotten, because they do sometimes feel like they're not top priority. They're not as immediate. There's not the necessity to do it this week. But if you don't do it this week and then you don't do it next week, suddenly you've lost your momentum. Those important outside of working in your business, the working on your business stuff is really important. It just doesn't feel as immediate sometimes. So blocking time in your schedule for those things, and then filling in your work time, your to-dos, your showings, all that is really a best way to do that. Another thing to remember when you're blocking time is to schedule time off. I am saying this out loud because I'm terrible at this. I'm terrible at this. It means that I don't have the energy I should have to best serve my clients or best be, you know, a family member, a wife, a friend. So that's really important. Schedule your time off. That is necessary for you to be a whole person. It's necessary for you to reach your goals. It's necessary for you to best serve your clients. This is not a selfish thing. This is also a way for you to be your best self for the people you're working with and working for. So make sure that you schedule time off too. Make sure that you're keeping in mind your most important goal, the thing that will single-handedly help you reach your someday goals. And remind yourself of those goals on a regular basis. So put it on a post-it on your mirror. Have your someday goals and your 5-year goals posted somewhere by your desk. You know, check that stuff regularly and remind yourself what you're really working towards. And also track your progress. That's going to really help you build momentum. Whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, I take a step back and I check, where are we on our goals for the quarter? How did we do last quarter? Where are we, you know, what's our momentum like moving into fourth quarter? How many transactions do I have under contract, and are my clients well cared for? That's the stuff that I need to go back and track. It's good accountability, and it's also good momentum. So a lot of times it's just a nice way to say like, oh, we're doing a lot better than I thought. And that's an important piece. So don't forget that. And then your planning time. Don't forget to block time for planning. And I've mentioned this before, thinking time, planning time. For me, it feels very self-indulgent, but it is so important. You can't get all this stuff lined up, track all these things, be accountable if you're just doing it on the fly. You've got to give yourself true, uninterrupted time to really think about, how are things going? How are we working towards my goals? I do this weekly with my assistant, but it's something you could do with another agent. It's something you could do in an accountability call with me. But just knowing where you stand with things and making adjustments as needed, and then planning out the next week, planning out the next day. These are things that I have gotten in the habit of doing pretty quickly now. So at the end of my workday, I plan out what's happening tomorrow so that nothing catches me off guard. And I'm remembering my priorities and checking to see that I got the things done today that I blocked for. Every week on Sunday night, I'm looking over what happened last week, what worked, what didn't. Am I making progress towards my goals? Do I need to tweak my ideal week time block schedule? And then plugging it into next week, along with all the other things that need to happen. I'm remembering my victories. I'm thinking about what I might change. I'm taking some notes on what I might want to do for next week or next month, maybe even next year. So it's a constant check back. It's constantly planning, making little adjustments, writing it out for a week to see how it goes, but being really thoughtful and intentional about how I'm using my time and how I'm working towards those goals is really, really key. And then when it comes to everything else, having strategies to manage those things. So, and that's more of a discussion for another day, but knowing that this isn't everything in your life. So you have to kind of work around the parameters that you have, especially right now, if anybody has kids doing school from home, this can be a challenge. But those are the key things, is to really get yourself focused on what has to happen right now. So thinking 5 years, 1 year, this month, this week, and today. And just breaking it down into very manageable pieces. So here's an example, just to give you an idea that's not real estate related, but it's from the book. So this is a real life example of a woman who used this system to determine how to take action on her someday goal. So she was an attendee of a One Thing seminar, determined her ultimate goal was to become the main act at a jazz venue. Oh, can't wait till we can see live music again. Recognizing this was no small feat, she used this process to work backwards and plan her path to success. So in 5 years, she wanted to have 25 jazz classics mastered, enough for an entire performance. So in 1 year, she had to have the first 5 of the 25 mastered. So using numbers to track is a very clear way to know what you're doing. So whether that's how many people you've contacted, how many transactions you've closed with happy clients this year, how many referrals you've gotten, these are things you can count and track. This month, she's going to start practicing the pieces. That's her priority. This week, she's going to identify the 25 jazz classics to focus on. So do you see how this gets broken down into very small pieces, small decisions, little research bits like that. And then today, she's going to start researching on the Library of Jazz Music. So it really gets broken down to a small, small level. And the visual that they always use in the One Thing is dominoes. So if you can think of the tiniest domino, that is a very small, easy, simple step. If you knock that over, by the 18th domino, you're knocking over the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It does not take much to get to that major, major shift and seeing some real results. But it does mean you have to start pretty small and just be really consistent about it. So I think that's a good visual to keep in mind as well. So we've got a little bit of time for questions. I'm curious if anybody else has had some thoughts as you're working through these, or challenges you've come across, or things that you're going to do moving forward. And again, you can get this information off the One Thing. It's called the Kick-Ass Guide to Goal Setting, but we'll also try to post it on the Facebook group too for launch. But does anybody else have some thoughts or questions on this?
Amanda.
Yeah, Jessica.
I just felt like it was totally reassuring when you said that it doesn't have to be this big, crazy, complex goal, because I think that can get overwhelming as a new agent. And so I think it's really breaking it down to just like, what's one thing I really want to like finesse or make sure that I can really knock out of the park. And so that's reassuring, because sometimes when you think of goals, you just think you have to have all these crazy ideas, and it really doesn't have to be so complex.
Yeah. And it's good when you're thinking of your someday goal to go big. Why not, right? But then when you're thinking 5 years and 3 years and 1 year, like thinking of something you feel is accomplishable, but a little bit out of comfort zone, a little bit out of reach. And it can be really simple stuff. Like one of my goals this quarter is to take a whole day off a week. That's real basic, but it's really hard for me. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. And I know how to break that down to make sure I'm setting myself up to have a day off the day before, and to make sure that I'm delegating responsibilities to my assistant so that I can really have a day off, and make sure I've got somebody to back up for me if I need to have a showing. You know, there's all these little pieces that are very small and simple, but those are the things you need to do to get to those goals. So yeah, good. Anybody else? Is everybody just thinking really hard about how they're going to break this down? Well, what I highly encourage you to do is, if you have time now, just keep rolling with it and write down those someday goals, write down those 5-year goals, write down the 1-year goal. One goal personal, one goal professional. They don't have to be a ton. When I write down my quarterly goals, I've got my production goals for the business, I've got a personal goal, and then sometimes I'll have one other that usually ends up being maybe a little business, a little personal. But that's it. And they don't necessarily have to be things that take up 3 months. One of the things I worked on last quarter was to make sure I had my morning routine set up. Also second quarter, but to have my morning routine set up. So it ended up being like figuring out how much time it takes me to do things, prioritizing, you know, what kind of exercise I was going to do, how I was going to meditate, what I was going to use to help me with that, where I was going to do that, setting up the space, all those pieces, and then building that habit, which a habit, ideally you've got 66 days to build that habit, to do it over and over again, even if there's like a I take off Saturday or whatever, but just that consistency. Last quarter, one of my goals was to establish a workday shutdown routine, which I did not do very successfully. So that's going to come into fourth quarter now. So I've determined what I need to do to shut down my day, and I've determined where I'm going to put that information in my planner. The piece I haven't mastered is when I'm going to do that. So it's a small thing, and it doesn't necessarily take up the whole quarter. So it's going to be a mini goal. I'm going to try to, get that accomplished within the first 2 months, and then I'll have a month at the end of the year that I could do another mini goal. So it doesn't have to be so set in stone. It doesn't have to fit the parameters so much. Give yourself a little bit of freedom within those walls and within those fences to, make something happen that's going to work for you. The important thing is that it's compelling, that it's measurable, that you can be accountable to it, and that it's going to get you towards that goal. Anybody else? How many people are actually going to write this stuff down? I'm telling you, it feels silly. Feels like art time. It is so effective. It's so effective. And it doesn't have to be pretty. My notebooks are not pretty. And if you've seen Sarah Oberbrunner's notebooks, hers aren't pretty either. We use fun pens and the writing's messy, but it's there. Like, the information is there. So if it helps you to have like a detailed breakdown of your goal, do that. If it helps you to have it on a notebook, have it in your phone where you can revisit it, however it works best for you. And there's different ways of breaking these things down. One of the things I'm going to do is I have the planner that I use is called the Full Focus Planner. It has some great similarities to the One Thing, though the One Thing does have its own planner, which you can find on their website. But I like to use Full Focus because it's built out quarterly. And I do have, I have an extra one that is a 1 quarter long planner, and it's their full size. So it's kind of like the size of a standard hardcover book. And it's really great. And they have a bunch of videos on their website. So my challenge to you is, if you will put together your someday goals and your 5-year goals and break it down to your GPS and send it to me, I'll do a drawing by the end of the week. So you've got until the end of the week to do this. Don't overthink it. Keep it simple. This should not take you 8 hours. Give yourself an hour one day, give yourself another hour another day. It really shouldn't take that long. Keep it really simple. But if you send me that stuff, I don't care if it's a screenshot of some notes you wrote down, or I don't care what format it's in. If you send me those, I'll put your name in a drawing and I'll pick a name to get that planner. It's like a $38 planner. So it's kind of cool. I really like it. There are plenty of other planners out there too, so I'm always happy to share my suggestions and opinions on that as well. I've used many. Cool. Well, that's all I have. If anybody has any other questions, we've got 10 minutes left. Otherwise, we'll wrap up early. All right, cool. Then we will put this, I'll see if we can get the PDF into the launch group. If not, go to theonething.com, and it's the number1thing.com. And they have a bunch of different great PDFs you can pull from there. You just have to give them your email address to get that information. There's the One Thing podcast is a really good way to get a breakdown of how to use these things. If you want more guidance on how to use your time and how to be more efficient and focused, the Full Focus Planner is what I use. It's a Michael Hyatt and Company product. They have a podcast as well. It's called Focus on This. When I need motivation or clarification on how to really use my time well, that's a good one. And they have videos on their website too, like setting up your ideal week and time blocking. So using a combination of things can be helpful. It just depends on what works for you. That's really what's important. It's about you. You know, everything you do is about your clients, but when it comes to planning your business and your life, it's about you. So do what works for you. It doesn't have to impress anybody else. It's really all about you. Cool. All right. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to seeing your goals. I'm not here to judge what they are. I just want to see that you did it. And if you want to set up an accountability call with me, 20-minute call, we're going to talk about what's your goal? How'd you do working towards it? How do you feel about that? What are you going to do next? What are your potential roadblocks? So it's a really good way to just keep you on track. And it's to give you some motivation, to give you a reason to finish things by a certain date. It is not about making you feel bad. I promise I'm nice on the phone. So if you want to do that, just text me and set up a time. I'll put my number in the chat. 414-534-7982. All right, everybody have an awesome week. Send me that stuff by the end of the week and I'll put you in the drawing for the planner. If you have any other questions, just follow up. I'm here to help. We're all here to help. You've got a whole quarter to get some great momentum for next year, to really kill some goals, to get on track. This is your 3 months. Make it count. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Mhm.